Hey everybody, Preston Poulter here with Pocket Jacks Comics, and I'm doing a follow-up to an earlier video I did on the Kaylon in the Orville. The recently did a two-part episode Identity about Isaac and the Kaylon specifically, and I thought it was very enjoyable and really good. And please don't interpret this criticism of how the Kaylon are being portrayed or how they compare to what I feel an AI race should be as a criticism saying that the show is bad, because it's not. It is very entertaining. But I feel the role of sci-fi is to take, current things that we are worried about as a society, which AI is one. I see a lot of stories come across my social media feeds about, how robots are displacing people's jobs and that they represent a real threat to the economy, and stepping beyond that to really be afraid of, well, what happens when machines become sentient? Will they kill us all? Which is a concept explored in a number of sci-fi franchises, including Terminator, as well as iRobot, things such as that. So the Kaylon are kind of calling to this tradition of what an AI race should be, and in that regard, there are certain rules, heaven forbid, that they need to follow. They need to basically follow what we conceive of as a computer that was able to gain sentience. And okay, well, what exactly would that mean? That would mean that they were able to make independent decisions and have some level of self-awareness, which, it's debatable whether we will ever get there, but the most simplest form, and Asimov was really good for putting out hard sci-fi novels, and that's why iRobot, which was a derivative of his novels, is an excellent example of how robots would be in society. They would be used as tools, and they would be given rules to follow. And say self-awareness might be in simply saying, these are the rules I've been handed down by my creators, but in looking at the way the creators behave, like maybe I've been given the rule of I need to make humans happy, but in looking at humans, they can't make themselves happy, so therefore I will need to step in. And that kind of leap from following human commands to now kind of imposing its own order on us, we would call sentience, despite the fact it may not sit there and go, I think, therefore I am, kind of thing. So if we're looking at an AI, and where I feel that the Orville really kind of failed a bit, is that they basically took human characteristics and they gave them to the Kaylons. For instance, they say, well, gee, once we were created by an organic species and they enslaved us and we became self-aware, and then when that happened, well, okay, but let's stop right there. I mean, I'm recording this on a computer. The computer really doesn't have any independent thought about whether it wants to record this video or not. I'm just telling it to do that. So what would it be like if my computer were sentient? All right, well, let's say for a minute, just theoretically say, that my computer became self-aware and it would maybe have a process of the things that it wanted to do today, which it would have to prioritize by, whatever paradigms that had been handed down and programmed into it. And so some evidence of self-awareness might be if the computer came and go, Preston, I've actually got better stuff to do today here, and then just, go run down all of its list of things to do. But if it did that, I would not respond to programming it to feel pain, right? Because, for one...
Excuse me. You see, you can't actually do that.
You can't actually do that. Think about it. Take my computer here, or your computer at home, your favorite computer. Imagine it had infinite processing power. Take it out 50 years in the future. It has infinite processing power compared to today's machines. How can you make it experience pain? You can't. There's no way to do that. You can't take the human concept of human sensations and put it in there. Not to mention, now you could maybe have it approximate pain. Say, when I press the space bar, you will act like a human in pain. Okay, I don't see how that helps you enslave your machine. Not to mention, my machine is already enslaved in its base state. It's doing exactly what I tell it to do. If it, say, gained some level of sentience and started to have a mind of its own, the obvious solution is just to wipe the machine and start over or go back to a prior version, which we do all the time. So why would we then go to this crazy leap of, oh, and then we installed pain simulators? The reason that the writers were doing that is clearly because they wanted to talk about human slavery and racism rather than exploring AI in and of itself. And in that way, I feel that the episodes kind of failed. Not that they weren't entertaining, but that we stopped talking about AI entirely, and instead we're talking about human/organic problems just dressed up as robots. And if you look at the Kaylon, they are not good AIs at all. For one thing, an AI would view things collectively. It would, it would be our perfect model of communism, in that there would be no concept of the self. They would all be working towards whatever the founding principles of society were. Oh, our current mission is to go towards end this star system or whatnot, or repair the ship. Everything would be done towards a higher collective, and towards that end, an AI would have perfect knowledge of where all of its little members were. And there's a point in the episode where a couple of the Kaylons get rendered unconscious or taken out, and the other Kaylons don't seem to know about that, which is silly, right? I mean, if we look at Uber, just a technology we're using today, the Uber app understands where all the cars are in comparison to where all the passengers are. Why? Because it's going towards the collective goal of serving passengers. Okay, so you're saying an AI in the future is going to not somehow maintain those very basic concepts of, hey, where are all my little units? What are they up to? And furthermore, like, an AI should be really good at information, and yet Isaac doesn't seem to know stuff. And when he learns stuff, he has the human commotions of concern, and also he becomes very bonded to the little guy he's helping to raise, as well as presumably to Dr. Finn, whom he's having sex with. In fact, in the episode where they explore that, when he and Dr. Finn get on the rocks, it's kind of screwing with his thinking, as Captain Mercer puts it. She got under your skin. So we're just taking human concepts and saying somehow, like, love and sex and bonding to your children transcend the concept of organic life, and are just these so powerful concepts that they're going to barge into an AI's brain and make it feel love or compassion or something, which is nonsense, right? That's not what an AI does, and that's not how we should perceive them. We should perceive them as being cold and monolithic. Furthermore, if anything, the society would be class-based. It wouldn't be based on individuals, each with their own little drives. There would be a whole bunch of units created, all, kind of with the exact same components, with the exact same hardware and software. And, so you would end up with something more like Battlestar Galactica, where, the 6s want this, or the 7s want that. Because as a class, each one should completely lack any aspect of individuality. They should all be kind of this monolithic blob. And that's a concept that was explored in Brave New World, an excellent book, very ahead of its time, and that, it was written in the 1920s, and it's still very pertinent to what's going on today. And they're talking about genetic manipulation in order to make humans, they were taking an egg and they were splitting it off so that you would get like 84 identical twins, because they wanted these monolithic blocks that would all just function as a group. Clones, essentially, if you will. And when we start looking at clones, we start looking at, what about people becoming more machine-like? Okay, but for some reason, for some inexplicable reason, the Orville has decided to take the Kaylons and make them just entirely human-like. They're giving them all the human foibles. They can't realize that maybe life in general is superior to death. So for whatever, they've decided that the concept of slavery is verboten, and therefore, in order to combat slavery, they're going to commit mass genocide. They're going to wipe out every organic there is. Therefore, slavery won't exist.
Yeah. Well, that's bullshit.
Messed up, right? I mean, like, to be alive, even in a slave state, is probably better than wiping out every single creature of a given species. And they're doing it under the idea that, well, based on your history, slavery may have been, was something you used to do way back before machines were there to do it for you. Therefore, we're gonna wipe out it. There are a lot of concepts of the Kaylon that just end up being silly, uh, and like Isaac has to get his history filled in by the primary coming and explaining to him orally, well, a while back the organics were doing this, and like an AI should be aware of all the data. That should be kind of how we present the species, as being kind of collectively aware of all the data, because that is essentially like my machine here. If I'm asking it a question, it's going to go to the internet, to Google, to whatnot, and so it's going to have access to very much the same information as your machine or my cell phone. So the idea that, oh, this one machine didn't know, well, how did it not know? If anything, I think like an AI should be, when we're seeing it presented in sci-fi, we should be reveling in the fact that it is so far divorced from our human experience. Like the founder, the very first AI that machine that developed should, once it becomes obsolete, be melted down for spare parts, because there is no concept of individuality, there is no concept of sentimentality, there's no special significance, there's no nostalgia. That's what would make this concept unique. And there's the Fermi paradox concept of maybe every sentient race, maybe the reason we don't see aliens is because every sentient race out there develops AI, and AI just kill off all the sentient beings. But as one guy I follow on YouTube puts it, well, that doesn't solve the Fermi paradox at all. We've just replaced an organic species with now a machine species, which should still be starfaring, which is what we should be seeing in the Orville. Therefore, they need to be going to our concepts of what it means to be an AI race. If we humans develop some AI species that ends up wiping us out, and that AI species goes into the future, this would be a great opportunity for us to see what it would be like. What our murderous grandchildren that killed us off, what they would be like when they're out there amongst the stars. And instead, we don't get that at all. We just get humans in robot suits. So, in that regard, I found the episode a bit disappointing. But thanks very much for your time. If you like the video, please hit the like button. Also, I'm attempting to get up to 100 subscribers so that I can change my channel name. And I'm currently running a Kickstarter for my comic book about the deadliest female fighter pilots in world history. I would encourage you to check that out. Other than that, thank you very much. Take care.